Thank you for joining us tonight for this meeting. My name is Katharina Sass. I'm a sociologist at the University of Bergen, and I'm also a member of the Left Party in Cologne, my hometown. And I'm one of the founders of this network, The Left for a World Without Prostitution, which we founded a long time ago. And well, at the moment, we are hosting this series of digital meetings, and today's meeting is about Norwegian prostitution policy. So I would like to welcome our three guests this evening. Marthe Hammer, who is a member of the Norwegian Parliament. There she is. And she's also, well, she has lots of experience with party politics in Norway. In 2015, she came to Cologne to give a talk there. And back then you were spokeswoman for women's politics of the Socialist Left Party, and now you're a member of Parliament. So great to have you. And welcome also to Maria Bonita Igland, who we cannot see yet, but I'm sure we will. She is the current spokeswoman for women's politics of the Socialist Left Party since 2023. So thank you for being here. And Kathy Joakimsen, who is the spokeswoman for women's politics of the Red Party in Norway. And well, you've been a member of the Red Party since 2013, and you've also led the women's committee since 2023. And there is Maria. Yes, now we can see you. Great. Wonderful. All right, so the plan for tonight is that Marthe will start by giving a talk on Norwegian prostitution policy, and then Kathy and Maria will comment, and then all three of them will be available for questions from the audience. And the questions, please, you can put in the chat, and then I will go through them and ask them and pass them on to our guests. And we're trying to keep meetings a little bit short and sweet. So the plan is to be done by around 8 o'clock, at least not much later than that. So yeah, that's the plan. So Marthe, I guess the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to talk about prostitution policy again. It's been quite a long time since I've actually spoken about this subject. I was, as you said earlier, spokeswoman for the women politics for the Socialist Left Party. I actually was in Cologne, in Köln, in 2017, maybe. Katharina, we went there on a seminar, on a conference. But I have been working with prostitution policy in Norway since I was starting to getting politically interested in the mid-90s, and have been working with this very good law that we actually managed to get established in 2009. And I would say that this Norwegian law on prostitution is quite of a very, very good innovation, I would say. I would say this is some kind of a very, very good politics innovation that the Swedish actually started to. So now I'm going to say something about this history and this law and what is the debate here in Norway. Let me see here if we can manage to get things done. Do you see any change in the presentation? Let me see. Okay, so the Socialist Left Party of Norway, we is a feminist party as well as a Red Party and a Socialist Party, and also concerned in green and environmental subject and international solidarity. But we are also a feminist party, works for gender equality and the protection of vulnerable groups. And we have for many years profiled ourselves as a feminist party. The ideology from us and those of us who actually worked for this law is that prostitution is not a free choice, but often a result of economic pressure, social inequality, and human trafficking. And that the Norwegian policy takes into account that the buyer's dominant power on the seller in the prostitution. And that is like a very important way of how we look at prostitution. And also this perspective has been crucial in the drafting of the Sex Purchase Act, which then criminalizes the purchase of sex, but not the sale. And that is really the good thing of our legislation. Our goal, like Socialist Left Party's goal with this law, but also the law's goal, is to reduce the demand for prostitution and thus combat human trafficking and exploitation. So I'm going to take you through the background to the Nordic model and the political motivation behind it. So first, some history, very short history, but just a long time ago, of course, Norway have also had vulnerable women, and in the late, around 1852 to 1925, we had this author, the novel Albertines, that was written by the author Christian Krogh, addressed the double standard and exploitation of young women at the time. And this is a picture of this novel, or this Albertine. And this book was published in 1886, and it was a very controversial book. It was immediately confiscated by the police. And then, of course, this main character in the book is a young seamstress who is raped by a police officer and ends up in prostitution. And this book, it has a lot of attention got a lot of attention in the newspaper and sparked a debate about public prostitution and double standards of men who sought out so-called public women. And the regulation meant that prostitutes were registered and checked for sexual transmitted diseases once or twice a week at the police doctor's office, and so-called visitation. So the Women's Association, they mobilized to fight against the prostitute's obligation to report to the authorities. And in 1888, the Storting, well, it's the Norwegian parliament, abolished the visitation system. And this painting, as I said, is a picture illustrating different scenes, such as the one below, where we see Albertine entering police doctor's office. So there's been, of course, in Norway, as in many other countries, a history for these vulnerable women in prostitution. But let us go a long way to the Nordic model, and then we are, as I said, in the late 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. And then we are Sweden. They got this law before us, and we were fighting the whole time on the early 2000s to get this Nordic model. And it's got this four kind of team, or first it wants to get prevention, which is important in the law, primary prevention at the social level, to make or raise social awareness of prostitution and its effect on those affected and society as a whole. And then that the law also should protect and support at the level of those affected. And prosecution at the level of perpetrators. It's been a long time since I've been speaking English, so I haven't trained for all these political words. The prosecution at the level of perpetrators, it measured to effectively combat organized structures and all forms of pimping, as well as the criminalization of those who use prostitution. And then you have these integrated policies, multidisciplinary cooperation at the level of profession. So why the criminalization of buyers and not criminalization in the whole? Why just the buyers? The law, it criminalized the purchase, the buying of sexual service to protect sellers, which is the vulnerable person in this act, from punishment, and place responsibility on the buyer, who is the strong one. And we also mean that this the purpose is to reduce human trafficking and exploitation. And the goal then, of course, is to reduce human trafficking by reducing the demand for sex and also the size of the market. And these words, reducing the demand for sex and the size of the market, is all words that is actually in the law. And then you have this normative social influence to change attitudes towards prostitution and promote equality in the society, which is also a very important part of laws as a whole, but especially for this law. Effects of the law, what happened? As I said, in Norway, we got this law in 2009. Then we had this red-green government, as was actually in the government, and this is one of our thing that we are very proud to have managed to do. And so in 2009 we got it, and by 2014 we had evaluation in Norway of the law, what actually did happen. And then we had a research team or making a report to evaluate the law. I don't think maybe we have a link to this report here, but maybe Katarina can send it to you all, because that is it's an open report. So in this report by 2014, it was very obvious that the law has a huge impact. They were very clear, those who did this evaluation, that the sex market had decreased by approximately 25% in major cities like Oslo, Bergen, and Stavanger since 2008. And this is quite an impressive result, actually. We have to take into account that in 2009, the Norwegian men, they were perhaps still, but especially in 2009, the most or the richest men in the whole Europe. They were, it was a very, very attractive market to come to Norway, because there was a lot of money to buy. And still the law had a huge impact and very significant impact. You can see it actually on the streets. Let me see, go vidare. Yeah. No, let me see. Yes. And this is also what we saw in Sweden. The law reduces demand. And demand is in Sweden is also the lowest, because they have had the law for the longest time. And as you see, about just 9.5% of Swedish men have bought sex in their lifetime, compared to, for instance, 27 in Germany. So less men buy sex. And the young men are most opposed to buying sex. I think we know. Okay, there's a lot of concern about safety. Does this law mean that it is more dangerous for these vulnerable women to get in or be into prostitution when we get this law? And there is also in this Norwegian evaluation, there is no evidence of increased violence against people in prostitution following the law's implementation. And this is very, very crucial argument, because it is a very big concern that getting this law, it just makes everything worse. But there is no evidence for that, and I can come back to it. But some of the arguments is that prostitution is a very violent thing to be in, and so there is not that there is more or less violence. And the other thing, there is a big concern that prostitution just go underground in some kind of a sense, but the way in the prostitution, if the buyers are going to find prostitution, then also the police will find them. So there is no darker market than if they are going to find buyers, then also the police will find them. So there is no evidence, and there's been a lot of research on it that can say that there is increased violence. So the legislation successfully reduces demand without compromising the safety of individuals in prostitution. And then you have this normative impact, changing attitudes and social norms. There's no doubt that the law has shifted social views, especially among young men, and that buying sex is just like socially unacceptable. There's not something that you talk about, that's something boys group just do. And it also acts as a tool to prevent violence by changing perception and behaviors in society. And of course, also as a consequence, fostering respect and dignity. So that's good for everyone, I would say. Challenges and need. Of course, women in prostitution, they are vulnerable, and everyone, I would say, is, well, at least most people are concerned about how helping people who is vulnerable out of prostitution. And of course, I'm not saying that everything is perfect in Norway. And I don't say that we don't have prostitution in Norway, because we do. So we do not need more so-called exit program, how to help women in prostitution out of it. We have something, and we have had some programs, but of course we need more money and more program and more training, both for language and other things, to help people out of prostitution. And then, of course, this prostitution, it also is part of like immigration and trafficking challenges as a whole. So, of course, when a lot of people is coming here, a lot of poor people coming here desperately need a way to find a better life, of course, there's also pressure on Norway. But as we saw when we got the law, was that the Norway wasn't the first country they came to get when they were doing trafficking or human trafficking. It's like now in Norway they had this law. We don't go to Norway. We go to another country where this is much easier. So of course this law must be combined with social policy and integration measures to provide real alternatives to prostitution. And of course you have different vulnerable people in prostitution. You have like people that's part or of human trafficking, but of course we have people and women in Norway who is just vulnerable and also ends up in prostitution. So when we go to this discussion point, didn't I like just there's a bit lack here of the debates and concern. Yeah, so I've been into that critics worry about the sex market may move underground, and I say there's no evidence for that. And as we see, both we and the buyer and the police can find it. And also there is no evidence for that the law increased the danger for those involved in prostitution. So there is no evidence for increased risk. So Katarina, maybe we had this key, if you want me to just go through the whole, and then you can maybe facilitate a debate afterwards, Katarina. So to summary, the Nordic model successfully reduces demand for prostitution by targeting buyers, resulting in decreased human trafficking. And there is, of course, need for support system to ensure long-term success beyond legal measures. There is, I would say, perhaps maybe the most interesting thing that is that there is no debate on this law in Norway. Absolutely no debate. The right-wing part in Norway, this debate, they ended by the report from 2014. We have had quite a intensive right-wing parties here who has been very critical for this law. Liberal parties as well, which mean that there is a freedom to sell yourself, and they don't do anything. There is no debate on this actually. So strong is actually this law, and my opinion is that the law is that is also the same in Sweden, and they actually have a right-wing government. Yeah, and I would say both the Norwegian and Swedish, and also Iceland, I think, serve as a global example for how to fight the prostitution and trafficking through demand reduction. Actually, very, very effective to reduce the demand. So I would absolutely encourage everyone to go for the Nordic model. Thank you, and sorry for my English here. I don't hear you, perhaps that's the problem. But, if it's just me, then it's not a problem.
Kathy, can you hear me? Can you? Yeah. Okay, so now you hear me, Marthe? Great. Okay. Well, thank you again. Kathy, would you like to follow up with a few comments from your Red Party point of view? I mean, both your parties are our sister parties, so the Red Party's policy on this is also important.
I think it was a good summary on how important this law is, this Nordic model. I'm so happy that there's no debate at all in Norway about this, not only on the left, but also on the right as well. So for us, it's also taken for granted that comrades in our party, they do not buy sex at all. That's also a norm in Norway. We do not do that at all. And it's also, prostitution is a big business with strong capital interests. That's also important to talk about. But it's a clear example of how capitalism turns equality and oppression into a source of profit, and some people get rich for other people's lack of choices. So that's also important. And it's also about a question about men's violence against women. So it's a part of the system where men's access to women's bodies is normalized and where women's vulnerability is exploited. So I think the Nordic model challenge by making it clear that buying access to other people's body is not acceptable at all. So I'm so glad that this is a strong law in Norway, and it seems to, be forever that way. So I stand by the presentation. It was really good, Marthe, the summary of how important it is.
And you can also confirm, right, the unions and the entire political, even the Labour Party, everybody is sort of united when it comes to this particular law.
And also the women's movement.
Very importantly, of course.
Yeah.
So it came from the women's movement since the 80s and 90s. They've been fighting for it. Yes.
Support here in Norway.
Maria, I can't see you, but is there anything you would like to add? Or if not, of course, you can also join us. And I think I'm going to probably start taking some questions now. Please, if everybody who has questions can just put them in the chat, and then I will read them to the guests. So, okay, here's one question for both of you. In Germany, it is currently claimed that many women voluntarily engage in prostitution. How is this issue discussed in Norway? What about the right of a woman to voluntarily engage in prostitution? What would you, maybe any one of you would like to start? Marthe, you said earlier that that's kind of a liberal point of view.
Yes, so there, for the first, our point of view is that selling yourself is not work. It's not something you do for, and that this is normally a rape, or that is something that's not. As I said in the start, that prostitution normally is not a free choice, but often a result of economic pressure and social inequality and human trafficking, and that it is not own choice. And as also what we see is that a lot of people in prostitution, they can go to the newspaper saying, this is my free choice, this is what I want to do, and that can be. And then often we have seen that 5 years later, they say, oh, I had a huge problem. I was actually very vulnerable. I didn't have that good. So there will always be examples of women and men wanted to sell themselves in prostitution, but we stands on the side of those many women, children who is exploited and vulnerable in human trafficking. So that is that's where we stand, and this is also maybe a debate that we face through the gender and homosexual environment or group, that we are very, I am very, it is very important for me that people can have sex with everyone that they want. I don't care. But in the time when there is money in it, then you will never know if you do it for free or if you do it actually for the money. So that is important.
I'm not sure if people can still hear me. Okay, can you hear me? We're having some technical issues, but Maria, now I can see you. Would you like to add anything? Oh, I think you're muted. No, you're not supposed to be muted. That's strange. But I'm sorry about these technical issues. Maybe we should start using Zoom. Sometimes I'm wondering. Kathy, would you like to add anything while Maria's trying to figure out the mic?
Yeah, it's also about class politics as well, because we see prostitution as a result of economic equality, poverty, immigration, and unequal power relations. So this is not a free and equal choice, and the law is to protect the many, but does not have the choice to not be in prostitution. So totally agree that is to protect the many, and this is not a free choice for many women in this, unfortunately.
Okay. Maria, can you speak now? Now you're on mute.
Hello, now I'm not.
Great!
Thank you, and I'm so sorry for the inconvenience with the technicalities. I support, I think both Kathy and Marthe has summarized this discussion actually very, very well. And I'm also very thankful for a lot of the things that Marthe says, that we don't have a discussion about whether or not prostitution is work or whether it is exploitation. So I think what is something that we don't really discuss that much in Norway today are perhaps more effective exit programs, like what do you do in order to help people out of prostitution? So I think that's actually where the debate needs to be in 2026. And also we have Sweden, in which they have they updated their law, meaning that it also is going to involve, for example, OnlyFans. We have to have a better law when it comes to online prostitution, which was a market that was not as big when the law came in Norway in 2009. So I think that would be a very interesting debate to take further in on the left. Yes, thank you. I think you need to unmute yourself.
I think I did, but can you hear me now? Sorry, I really think we have to change the platform. Big blue button. It's not doing a great job here, is it? One question is there a special department within the police, and do they have special education to do this job? And do they work with social workers? How are the services sort of integrated? Can any of you give an example of that? How does the police work? And there's actually a related question here also. That was that. Well, what if it's not a good argument? This person writes to say that if the men will find the sex workers, the police will find them. So the important issue should be how much is invested in protective services, outreach, and comprehensive support programs, and do they effectively improve safety and long-term outcomes for sex workers or women and others in prostitution, as I would prefer to say, but maybe you can say a bit more about how these outreach programs work in Norway and how the police works. I mean, you said everything's not perfect. You would like to be there to be more debate about this and more money invested in outreach, right? Maybe you can say a bit more about this.
Yes, I think I think you have to take into account that the law actually has worked so much that we don't have prostitutions on our streets anymore. We don't have that many women into prostitution. So when we have cases with prostitution, it is either a case which is about like alcohol, drugs, this kind of reasons that people are so in big trouble. So then you have the programs trying to helping people out of their really addicted problem, and then we have a lot of different kind of programs for that. So that is like one way of trying to help people out of prostitution, like trying to get to the addicted problem, which is like one of the reasons why people end up in prostitution. The other way that people in Norway end up in prostitution is by some human trafficking, and you have some occasions by different not nationalities, but when we started the law in 2009, we have a lot of women groups coming from different countries in Africa, and they were like more or less targeted to go to Norway, coming to Europe to go to the street and sell themselves. And then now we have different kind of prostitution. Maybe you, Katarina, can correct me, but you have some kind issues in like different kind of massage shops for some Asian thing, and then our different Asian groups. But this is like a concern of more or less human trafficking. And what the police here in Norway say, and the police, they are very positive to the law. They have been to our side always, and they say first, it is a way. This law, it is a way to get into this act. When you actually have this law that the buyer can be criminalized, then you have a reason to go into this kind of happening. So it is actually a way to strengthen the woman in this relationship, that she can say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, but you are. And then they normally use this law to get into much more organized criminal kind of like a situation when they find organized criminal. Yeah. I don't find the right way to end this word. So they use this law to get into cases for ending human trafficking. And then they have a lot of cases that they have done for the trial here in Norway that started with this law, but ended up like very, very big cases for human trafficking. I don't know if that was the answer on the question. Maybe you, Katarina, would like to comment on it. No, I don't hear you.
Oh, now. Yes, maybe Kathy or Maria would like to add anything about the programs that we have here, outreach, and how the police works as well. I guess it's a bit different in the different cities as well, isn't it? And we have this exit program within the police department. and they are quite well trained, but it's always a question of resources, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very much a question of resources, and I've a lot like Marthe said, that my impression as well is that the police, they want to help us. They want to help us with fighting the human trafficking, but at the same time, they don't always have a lot of resources. And as we know, that violence against women have never been a high priority, sadly, when comparing it to, for example, economic criminality. Yeah, so that's yes, that's always been something that I feel like we have to always have a focus on that as well. I don't know if you think of anything else. Kathy, wanted to come to the police?
No, I don't think so. We don't have one single unit for prostitution, but like I said, visual teams who works with it. Yeah, but yeah, resources, of course. So I agree. Yeah. I don't think I can't hear you now. Or is it only me?
It's strange how my mic keeps falling in and out. So another question is about the numbers. So you mentioned that in the evaluation from 2014, there was this market reduction of 25% that was estimated there. What about, are there any more current numbers? And what has happened since then? Is demand still going down? And you're familiar with a more recent study?
I don't know that I'm not updated to maybe the recent studies, but I haven't read anywhere that it has increased, at least. So since the debate is non-existing, then it's also there is not any evidence that it has increased, at least. That's my point, or that's my opinion, at least. And yes, I can see if there was some kind of references here.
The latest number I remember reading was that it's at this point 1 out of 10 men, Norwegian men, who have bought sex. I haven't heard another more updated number than that, but that means that Norway is a very small country, so that means that most people actually know someone who has bought sex. But just like Marthe and Kathy says, the numbers has not increased since the law came, so it has actually had an effect on how people view prostitution and buying someone's consent.
The law has had a really strong norm-setting effect and has a lot of broad public support. So the last number, yeah, 1 out of 10, and yeah.
Yeah, the last time I spoke to a researcher at the university about this, she told me that now in surveys they ask, do you or have anybody you know ever bought sex, because the self-reported occurrence is very low, but that of course it's also criminal, so that of course plays a role for the numbers, I suppose. But let's take another question. If a woman isn't sure if she's doing it for herself, out of her free will or whatever, or for money, how are women able to sell their bodies under the Nordic model? And how is it secured that there is no violence? I guess there is violence, isn't there? There's always violence in prostitution, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, say the question again.
So, how are women able to sell their bodies under the Nordic model?
Yeah, also since the Nordic model, it criminalized the buyer. So women who come here, they can actually sell themselves, but the buyer always takes risk that it can be that it's doing something that's actually is criminalized. But in Norway, we see that for the many, this law is so important, and it is so important to especially reduces the demand and the opinion about prostitution, that is much more important than those few that maybe is quite loudly and worldly in the newspaper or everything, to get to saying their freedom to sell sex and that their buyer should not be criminalized. So that is like the big, I would say, the political innovation with this law, is that it actually managed to criminalize the strong part of it, the buyer, which means that the buyer starts again. So from my point of view, again, I don't care. You can have sex with the one that you want, but in the minute or in the second that you actually need money for it, both you and the buyer will never know if it was because of that you desperately needed those money. Did you have a child or did you not? Did you? And what is actually important in our freedom, what is important in our society, is it the freedom to sell or to buy sex, or is it the freedom for the many to not be perhaps a risk for ending up in human trafficking, the risk for ending up in the very rich Nordic countries with the most richest men in all of the world, which is rarely the result. If we didn't have had this law, then we would have a lot of women coming from many other countries, both in Europe and other parts of the world, coming to Norway to sell market. And you will also, and we haven't spoken about that one, but the prostitution market and buying of people is also a very easy way to like, what is the English word for hvitvasking? How to make things that is criminalized, and then you just put it through prostitution, and then it will be legal business. So I don't know the name for the English name for hvitvasking, but it is. Huh?
I think it's money laundering.
Yeah, it's money laundering.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as we also know that the prostitution and human trafficking is a very nice way to just also have a way to get a lot of money from other illegal criminal issues into legal issues.
For me, prostitution is violence. And there's no equal parts if there's money involved at all. So consent isn't there in prostitution, we mean. So it's violence against often women.
Okay, one person has been to Tromsø and is saying that, can you hear me? She's saying that she saw massage salons in Tromsø where there was prostitution happening. What is the situation with those today?
Again, where do I see these questions somewhere? Can you see it again?
They are in the public chat, but this one was in German actually. So it was about the massage salons. And maybe one other question that maybe also all of you could say something about. What about sex workers organizations in Norway? How
Yes.
did they react to the law?
Well, we have like the organizations for people in prostitution, and they have not been fond of this law. They have worked against it, and their concern is, like I have said, the concern that this law would make it harder for those women and people in prostitution. So that is what they say, that before we get law, we need to have like these exit programs and things, which is of course good arguments. But now also they are not that loud, because I think everyone sees that this law do work so well that that it actually just stopped that Norway was a country for human trafficking. But of course we have it from time to time, and also we do have prostitution, like for massage institutes that we have had some TV programs of it also. And what we see is that it is lack of resources in the police. That is one of the reasons why they haven't gone into this organized or into this kind of businesses. But when they get tips or get to know it, then they can do it, and then again they can start using this law to get into something in business, and it turns out to be quite well part of organized crime. So it is some kind of a way into getting into touch with the organized crime. So that's why the state prosecutor here in Bergen really defend this law, because it helps the police in their work against human trafficking.
Kathy, maybe you could add a little bit about also potential unintended side effects, or anything that should be improved regarding, for example, migration, residence, deportation of women who don't have legal status in Norway. And others, of course, women and others. I think you're on mute, Kathy. Strange.
Should I?
Maria, maybe you could. Maria, maybe you.
Yeah, because actually, that is one of the biggest problems that we have today, and I dare say that the biggest problem is has never been the Nordic model. It's been other laws and how other, especially women who don't have a legal status in Norway, are treated. And therefore, both the Red Party and the Socialist Left Party have always been fighting that these women should get legal permanence, especially those who are, those who came to Norway because of human trafficking. So, and that has been used as an argument that the Nordic model does not work. But we have always been convinced, and we're still convinced this day, that that's not due to the fact that it is not legal to buy sex in Norway. But I think that's something that definitely still exists, that a lot of women, especially women of color or women from both Asia and in East Europe, that they are still treated badly today. But I think that's, like I said, not because of the Nordic model, but something that you have to constantly be focusing on. Now you have muted yourself.
It's got there. So in a way, it's an issue of immigration policy.
Yes, yes. Immigration policy, and also a lot of that has to do with poverty and the class system that we have in Norway.
Yes. So, of course, you're critical of that. Yes. How was this law discussed within your parties? Was there a consensus from the beginning, or was it a long debate back then?
No, in our party, it was definitely not that, because we had quite a big minority that was concerned about those people in prostitution and their the consequences for them. And had so we have, I would say, our movement has always have a very close relationship to the organizations for people in prostitution. We have had a quite a good contact and debate, and there's also a big minority in our party was also didn't support the law in the beginning, and also like they want everything else to be okay before they could start the law. Like they want the immigration to be okay, they want every exit programs to be okay, they want people in addicted to drugs to get all the help they needed, and then we should start getting the law. But the politics reality isn't like that, and the result from this law also mean that the law in itself actually did a quite big change. And when we did get the law in 2000, it was actually just the same year that our party's Congress ended up having a majority who supported the law. And I would say, to be honest, that of course that also was a result that we saw that Norway ended up being a very, very attractive land for human trafficking. When Norwegian, and it's of course sad, but when we saw that Norwegian streets was filled up with women coming from a lot of different countries, they saw that this is not a very good way. Why is Norway now ended up as a center for human trafficking? We have to do something. So that's also, to be honest, a part of why we managed to get the majority to vote for it, also in the Labour Party and also in the other party that was part of the government. But the way that the law has actually worked in Norway, and the very, very impressive results of it, and the lack of demand, and that it actually works so good, is the reason why the right-wing parties haven't been offensive, or again that they haven't taken this case up again to debate. That's the why we, because it's so successful, it's not a debate also for the right-wing party, the parties to the right.
Thank you. Kathy, what about, I think we soon need to start wrapping up actually, to keep our time. But what about the Red Party? Was there a long debate in the Red Party, Kathy?
No, for us, it's kind of the law is celebrated, and for us, defending sex buyers is not compatible with our feminism and class politics and fight against exploitation. So it's celebrated and it's talked about, but not debated. So it's here to stay for sure. Yeah, especially you're talking about class and feminism, and yeah, how important it is. So it's celebrated.
Yeah, typical. Yeah, just that a few here from time to time are coming from the far right. But nobody's really challenging it, no. I think I have to agree with that. But there are so many more questions here. I'm really sorry to all those whose questions I didn't get to ask. But we, as I was saying, we want to keep these meetings a bit short and sweet. And I would also like to say that on our website, we have lots of information about publications, statistics that are out there, research on the effects of the Nordic model, on the effects on the demand. And yeah, I think it was a good point about the immigration policy, because that's also something we care about strongly in the German left, that, well, we demand permanent residence rights for women and others in prostitution, right? And you do that too. Yeah. Well, would you sorry, Kathy?
That's important for us as well, the deportation and the rights for the women facing that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, do you have any final comments? Anything you didn't get to say?
No, I see those who want to see more about the statistics and the report. So maybe, I don't know if you have find a link to the report.
The report is on our website. That report from 2014, I'm pretty sure it's on our website together with lots of other things. And we should probably put even more on there on the research that there is on buyers, because the comparative research on buyers is also really important. Yeah. And the numbers for Germany are quite fresh. They're just a couple of years old. 27% of men in Germany have bought sex, and only 4% have paid for sex during the last year. And these numbers are very high in comparison with Sweden and Norway. So yeah, I think we have stuff about that on our website. Yeah. Anyways, well, I would like to thank all three of you for making time for this. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can stay in touch. Yeah, thank you so much for your very helpful presentations and comments. Thank you.
Thank you so
and
much.
Thanks to everybody for joining today. And there will also be we have been recording this, so we will put it on the website. All right. Thank you.